It's now time for Energy Insights, where you get an inside view and local perspectives of all the oil and gas progress going on in the Mid-Ohio Valley. This program is being brought to you by the Southeastern Ohio Oil and Gas Association and can be heard every Saturday at 9 a.m. on local radio WMOA AM 1490 and ESPN radio WJAW FM 100.9 and AM 630. It's now time for the show. Here's Johnny Wharf, your local host.
Energy Insights on a Saturday morning, another opportunity to meet with David R. Hill. David R. Hill Incorporated is the business, and David Hill is the guy, and has, looking back over the years, you shared with us, I think last week, a couple of weeks ago, about being in a diner and realizing that this is what you want to do. And I think a lot of us, growing up, maybe in my case, listening to Marty Brenneman on the radio, as a kid saying, man, I want to do that. Or my father, as was the case, because I'm second generation as well. But you told me off air that it went all the way back to maybe playing alongside the creek and picking up a rock and wondering exactly what it is, or just as any kid would do, this is really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what we talked about in one of your previous episodes was my dad was drilling a well in Doddridge County, West Virginia, and they brought the samples down to this diner, and the geologist was looking at the samples, and he was going to determine whether this was going to be a productive well or not, and it turned out to be very productive. And so, again, I knew at an early age I was going to be a geologist. So, you're right. One of the things I used to do in the summertime is go along the creek and just pick up rocks, and if it looked neat, I'd put it in my pocket, and only later for my mother to find out it was still in my pocket when she was drying my clothes. And I was always in trouble on a Saturday morning because I'd forgotten to take all the rocks out of my pockets.
That's a good story. Also, talk a little bit about how your family got into the business and going back a couple of generations.
Yeah. Well, again, in one of our off-air conversations, you guys sparked a memory that I had actually forgotten about, but I was asked the question, I'm second generation, how did my dad get involved in this industry? And as it turns out, my dad was in Japan at the end of World War II, and he was a tank driver, tank operator, I guess. And at least back then, driving a tank was very similar to running a bulldozer. So when he came back home after the war in the late 40s, I'm assuming, the little town that he lived in southern Illinois, an oil boom had hit that town. And my dad had successfully completed the 10th grade. So, didn't have a high school education, but the one thing he could do to get into this new industry that hit his little town in southern Illinois was be a bulldozer operator. He pulled the machinery in, he leveled the locations out to drill the wells, and and he was very good at it. He was a smart guy. He was ambitious, and he slowly worked his way through the ranks. And then by the time you fast forward to the 1990s, he had worked his way through this company, and he managed their operations in Ohio and West Virginia. But it all started out him being a tank operator at the end of World War II.
It's fascinating to think about the transition. And then what about your transition? Think about getting into the business as a young man and the things that you're asked to do, whether you want to do them or not, right, in the field or otherwise. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about some of those, and then the things you liked, maybe the things you didn't like, and then ultimately how you ended up doing what you're doing now.
Sure. So as I mentioned, my dad was in the business, and I knew I wanted to be a geologist. So I attended Marietta College for 2 years. I transferred to Muskingum. So my degree was in geology in 1980. I knew I wanted to be in the oil and gas business. Well, my dad had a guy that he worked with a lot from Columbus, Ohio. His name was Jerry Olds, and they were drilling wells together. And so I graduated in May of 1980 from Muskingum with a degree in geology. And Jerry Olds takes me to Columbus and to the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. He helps me get set up and bonded to be an oil and gas operator. And so in September of 1980, I drilled my first well in Perry Township, Coshocton County. So I'm a 22-year-old kid. I have been out of college for a few months. Now, I knew that my dad and Jerry had me on a short leash. I didn't realize till many years later just how short that leash was. So I've been, I was 22 years old, drilled my first well, and actually it was a very good well, very not good oil well. It's still in existence today. So I've been doing this for a few years now.
Yeah, I remember where you were and what you were doing when I drilled my first well. I think if you're passionate about what you do, you'll always remember the first time of that. And then as it relates to your business today, what would be a day-to-day, in terms of the operation of the things that you would do?
Well, okay, so today, my day-to-day operation is basically monitoring the wells that I have, making sure that they're being operated efficiently. But more importantly, I'm picking locations and I'm looking at the geology. Where is going to be our next well? Where's going to be our next big field? And that's the role I really play right now. I have a wonderful staff that takes care of the details, and I'm more of a 30 or 50,000 foot guy, and I really enjoy that. I love seeing the big picture. So what I do really isn't very physical at all, and so I'm 61 years old. As long as my health holds out, I don't have any plans at all of retiring. I just want to keep drilling wells and finding oil and gas.
That's right. Picking up a couple rocks, putting them in his pocket. That's David Hill. David R. Hill Incorporated is the business. Energy Insights is the program brought to you each and every Saturday by the Southeastern Ohio Oil and Gas Association.
Thank you for listening to Energy Insights, brought to you by the Southeastern Ohio Oil and Gas Association. Tune in every Saturday at 9 a.m. on WMON ESPN Radio WJAW as Johnny Wolf brings you your local and inside perspectives of the oil and gas progress going on in the Mid-Ohio Valley.